Good morning, everybody. Thank you to the Florida Council leaders for asking me to join you again this year. Um, I'm always glad to talk membership, especially when I have a captive audience. And I love to share what's taking place at the national level on the membership front. Certainly a lot has changed in the last 12 months since I last gave you an update. And probably like you, like General Atkins, like Joe mentioned, we're all looking forward to the day where we can be back in person and talk about these things. Membership, what do we know about it? We know it's a complex issue. It's challenging. And just when you think you have it all figured out, everything changes. This was particularly true in 2020. But there's one thing I think that we can all agree on, and that's membership will continue to be a top priority well into the foreseeable future, both at the national level and in your individual chapters. I think that General Atkins probably said it best. We need to look at our membership as a marathon, something that we're committed to for the long haul rather than a sprint. Unfortunately, there aren't any quick fixes to solve our membership challenges, but there are a number of things that we can do to ensure a strong foundation for the future, whether that's offering a strong and relevant value proposition, adopting a solid marketing strategy, promoting strong messaging for a diverse audience, or all of the above. Today, what I want to do is show you how we're doing some of these things at the national level. And as you hear about these things, I'd encourage you to consider how some of these concepts could complement what you're doing at the local level, or how you might adapt some of them as your own. Because when it comes to membership, I think one of MOA's great advantages is that we have efforts taking place both at the local and national levels. Your efforts definitely go hand in hand with the efforts taking place at the national level, effectively creating this surround sound approach. And I think the more that we can work together and complement each other's efforts, the stronger that we're going to be. Erin, next slide, please. Thank you. For those of you who are already familiar with MOA's strategic plan, you know that membership is a core pillar with the goal of ensuring MOA remains the strong and viable organization it is today for yet another 90 years and well beyond. Job number one is to reverse some of the downward trends we've been seeing among premium and life membership. And General Atkins alluded to this earlier. As you know, these membership categories represent our dues paying members. These are the lifeblood of our association and allow us to achieve our mission. We're seeing progress in these categories, but there's always more work to be done. And as we work to further strengthen membership, it's safe to say we have a number of challenges, but I would say none of them are insurmountable. We just really need to work at overcoming them, focus on them. And I would just point back to remember the marathon. For one, generational attitudes have certainly changed about membership. People no longer join for the sake of joining. But I don't believe that it's people aren't joiners. They need a reason to join. In fact, our research shows that younger people are joining organizations, but they're joining groups that they see or perceive as making a difference in the world. And I think with the right messaging, we can certainly make a strong case that MOA does just that. Another challenge, we also know that MOA isn't necessarily a household name yet, but we're working on that. If we expect somebody to join, they first need to know who we are. Anecdotally, I think we've all heard at one point in time, what's MOA or who's MOA? Our goal is to get the word out through a series of brand awareness initiatives, so when that invitation to join comes, the recipient already knows enough about us to make the join decision. Of course, we also face an aging membership, so we're working diligently to bring in the younger officers. We talked a little bit about that earlier. Our current membership model with the 3 membership categories, which we'll talk about in a minute, sets us up really well for this. And then, as if we didn't have enough challenges to keep us busy, along came coronavirus last year. It's been a significant obstacle that we had to adapt quickly. But I'll get more into that as we go along as well. Next slide, please. So what does membership look like today? At the end of 2020, MOA stood at approximately 350,000 members strong, and I'm happy to report that membership has remained steady this past year despite the challenges we've just discussed. In fact, we are up over 2% growth year over year. Our membership model with the 3 membership categories, basic, premium, and life, is really one of the keys to some of the successes that we've been seeing. We adopted this model back in 2013 in response to some really disturbing downward trends that we were watching, and we knew that something needed to be done. So when we adapted this model, we expected that going forward, it would allow us to increase the percentage of younger officers, give us a larger pool of members that could later be converted to paid membership, again, going back to the premium and life categories, maintain strong membership numbers to ensure our one powerful voice on Capitol Hill, and better differentiate the value between membership categories. We need to give members a strong reason to move from one category to the next. MOA's membership model is really designed to guide those who have never heard about us, starting with that free basic membership, educate them about MOA's value, engage them, and then invite them to that next level of membership. If this model is going to be successful, we really need to hone our ability to move members from one category to the next, from that free basic category to a paid or premium or life membership. It sounds very easy, but it sounds easier than it is. We are seeing improvements in our ability to move people along this continuum, but it is a key area of focus for us. So a quick overview of membership by the categories. Life membership today represents about 47% of MOA's membership. This is a really good news story, and I suspect that the majority of you in the audience today are life members. Thank you for that support. But I want to point out that 42% of life members are 80 years old or older. And this points back to that challenge I mentioned regarding our aging membership. Again, we're working to drive younger demographics. Average age right now is 67. We'll keep up the good fight on that to bring that average age down and move younger officers into that life membership category. Premium membership, as you know, is our annual membership option, $48 a year. We're doing a lot better at keeping our premium members as we watch renewal rates increase year over year. In fact, in 2020, we exceeded our goal and landed at 79.2%, which our goal was 78.5%. And when you look at benchmarks within the association world, this measures up quite well, especially given that MOA membership is more voluntary than some of the other associations that are out there tied to professional development or credentialing and that sort of thing. We're proud of this number, but again, room for improvement. We'll keep working that as well. But of course, we still have challenges. Acquisition of brand new members has slowed, coming directly into that premium membership category. Renewal rates of first-year premium members are lower than desired, and conversions of that basic member to premium remains challenging, even though we are seeing small improvements along the way. 56% of our basic members have identified as currently serving. And this, I think, is a really good news story. The intent of this category was to give an option for currently serving officers who weren't quite ready for all the value that MOA had with transition services as they thought about leaving the military. Let's bring them in. Let's give them a taste of what MOA is. So that fact that 56% of our basic members are self-identifying as currently serving is a good story. We're working diligently to attract younger officers into this category so they can begin to learn more about MOA at no cost, no barriers to entry. So we can cultivate them into long-term premium life members, and they know where to turn when they need our services. Overall, the model is really working for us. And it comes with the benefits of building the strong pipeline for paid membership. It gives us a really solid prospect list that we can work to recruit into that premium membership category. And because they're already in our system as a basic member, this really, we have the opportunity to educate them. So we end up with educated and engaged prospects for paid membership, people who are making an informed decision when they pay their membership dues. And the other thing that this basic membership category does, again, it keeps our overall number high, which is really good for our advocacy efforts. And that allows us to stay focused on growing that paid membership level. Next slide, please. So I mentioned earlier that we really had to adjust our marketing strategy significantly once the coronavirus hit. We proceeded with caution to make sure we were getting the most of our limited resources, but we were also very mindful that our annual membership goals weren't going to go away just because Corona made its appearance. We took the opportunity to be very deliberate in our actions and mindful in adjusting our strategy. But at the same time, we wanted to stay true to the foundations of our overall strategy. Most importantly, we didn't stop marketing. Rather, we evaluated all of our activities to ensure that the messaging was correct, that we weren't being tone deaf to the environment, and that we continued to get the word out about MOA's value. And I'm really happy to report that this appears to have been the right approach for MOA. People have been reading our emails, interacting with our advertising on social media, paying attention to direct mail, and best of all, responding by joining and upgrading. I think we've made the best we could of the COVID environment by modifying some campaigns while staying the course with others. Again, what was most important is that we stayed true to those foundational marketing strategies while being flexible as the environment evolved and the data told the story. But a little bit more about our overarching marketing strategy and some of the foundational marketing strategies I've mentioned. Our aim is to ensure MOA membership meets the needs of military officers and surviving spouses and meets them at where they are in their customer journey, whether that's them first hearing about MOA or at the point of becoming a paid member. All of our marketing initiatives align with various stages of this journey. And as we work hard to meet them on this journey, we also want to make sure the messaging is really relevant to each individual's career or life stage. We know we have members age 22 to 102 and maybe even older, and everybody's needs are different. So we need to tailor that. We need to look at the personas that we're working with and ensure that messaging is right along this journey as well. But what I'd like to do now is share some specific examples of some of our 2020 initiatives so you can see how we put our strategy into action in this COVID environment. Next slide, please. In all of our marketing efforts, we showcase the value of membership. But like General Atkins said earlier, it became especially important to tell members why MOA membership was more important than ever this past year. Our Spring Life campaign is a prime example of how we revamped our entire messaging to promote exactly that, why MOA is so important right now. The change in direction upended our calendar and our timing, but it was the right thing to do with the right message, and it certainly showed in the results. We recognize campaign results we hadn't seen in years as the result of this approach. Next slide, please. It was really also important that we kept MOA's name front and center. We wanted to avoid going dark in the market. We really suspected that people would have more time to be online during the quarantine, so we wanted to make sure our message would be seen. We had to take advantage of the communication channels that we could, especially as all in-person opportunities disappeared. And unfortunately, this looks to be true for at least the first half of 2020, as we're already seeing cancellations come in for events that we had hoped we would make an appearance at this year. So with this in mind, we stuck with our strategy for our national advertising campaign, which is primarily digital, and it focuses on growing brand awareness and encouraging our officers to become basic members. We stayed steady with our original media plan and even introduced new COVID-related content to ensure our messaging was highly relevant for the times. Our advertising strategy also included the new television commercial that General Atkins scooped me on. So some of you may remember that we debuted a commercial during the 2019 Army-Navy game. So based on that success and commitment to growing MOA's name recognition in the military community, we unveiled another commercial in late 2020 in select markets during the Army-Navy game and the Army Air Force game. To date, response has been positive. We've seen more traffic to our website. I can report we are certainly getting the word out about MOA, and that's the goal, creating that brand awareness. And at the same time, I think we're putting a new face to MOA. I received anecdotal feedback. People were surprised to see MOA advertising along the likes of USAA, Pentagon Federal, during these national games. And they were impressed with what they saw. So looking forward to next month, we're going to use this commercial during the Super Bowl. And this is exciting because it's a game where most people who are watching the game are also paying really close attention to the commercials. We're going to air in 2 local markets, and that's budgetary constraints. I think we've all heard how expensive Super Bowl advertising can be, and we certainly cannot be nationwide. But the advertising and airtime becomes much more affordable, much more quickly in select markets when you go local. So we are looking at 2 military-centric populations, and we're looking forward to results and seeing how we can build upon them going forward. Next slide, please. In 2020, obviously, we had to pivot quickly on everything that we do. Our officer-to-officer campaign, which is also a key component of our national advertising campaign, is the perfect example of how we did this. We had plans to interview and film 6 officers, currently serving officers, that 40 to 60 target group that General Atkins had mentioned to you, individuals who fall in that. These officers would share their stories about challenges or experiences they've had as an officer, something that other officers would be able to relate to. These officers would then become the centerpiece to our ads and promotions to drive prospective members to our website to view their full story and to learn more about MOA's mission and our membership options. Of course, COVID came into play and had other plans for us. These interviews were canceled and we were forced to get creative. So instead of doing the full in-person video series that we had planned, we interviewed 3 officers about the challenges and concerns they face in our new COVID world, all filmed remotely from their home computers. It worked beautifully, and this allowed us to introduce new content, again, highly relevant content, into the market. If you have any interest in seeing any of these stories, I would encourage you to go to our website and take a look. Our goal is to create a full library of stories that would allow people to keep coming back and learning more about these different stories. And it really does put a face on MOA membership that may be different than the perceptions people had held about MOA. So if you go to our website, I will, it is moa.org/officer-to-officer, and the 2 is the number 2. The good news is that late this past fall, we were finally able to resume more filming. So in the coming weeks, we're going to be introducing a number of new, fresh stories featuring MOA members and their families. So be on the lookout for that. Next slide, please. So with every campaign, we continue to test different elements to see what resonates best, and then we apply the results to future efforts. So testing became more important than ever, especially as we look to use our limited resources wisely. Back in 2019, we had introduced a series of holiday-themed campaigns and recognized some great results in premium membership, both brand new joins and upgrades from basic membership. So in 2020, we wanted to broaden these efforts by testing a life membership offering. We didn't expect the results to be so strong. We ended up with more than 360 new life members from a series of 4 emails over the holiday weekend. I think we were stunned. But overall, our holiday themes have been a big success this year as well. By year end, we had exceeded the results that we saw in 2019. So right now we are wrapping up our end of year promotion that just concluded, analyzing the results and the tests from messaging to incentives to discounts, so we can determine which elements will apply in our 2021 campaigns, which are already well in development to roll out. I think our first one will be associated with President's Day. Next slide, please. So whether there's a pandemic or not, listening to members is always critical, whether it's informal feedback or comprehensive research studies. Prior to the pandemic, we had finalized 2 major studies which gave us actionable insights and data to refine some of our strategies. First was our dues study, and I may have talked a little bit about this last year, but it's an ongoing discussion, so I think worth talking about again. The dues study provided solid data about MOA's dues levels, the value MOA membership provides for the price, as well as pricing thresholds for premium members. What we found was that members believe they receive much more value than what they pay in their annual dues. Pricing tolerances are much higher than the current $48 per year, and we found that all of our key performance indicators increased since our last study, despite an increase in dues that had occurred during that time frame. The MOA Board of Directors took this data into consideration, along with a recommendation for an increase in 2021 during recent deliberations about dues levels. However, at that time, they voted to hold off on an increase due to the pandemic and the current economic environment. Right now, what we're doing is a quick refresh of this study now to determine if perceptions and findings have changed over the past year. These findings will then inform board level discussions about potential increases going forward in 2022. I'm certain you'll be hearing more about this going forward. We also conducted a brand awareness study with the goal of benchmarking current awareness levels of MOA in the military community. As we invest more and more in growing brand awareness, it's really important that we're able to measure the impact of these efforts. The study reinforced what we already thought we knew. There's room for growth. Those who knew of us were more positive, but it was clear they didn't fully understand MOA's mission. Advocacy was important to them, but it wasn't something that pushed them towards membership. But that's something we'll work towards changing with our messaging. This was also a great opportunity to test different messaging. In fact, we had the opportunity to test the messaging that was at the center of the television commercial I just mentioned to you. It was well received there, so we proceeded with rolling it out into market. We also received a much more positive response to messaging that reinforces a partnership in navigating and protecting benefits, as opposed to a more adversarial tone. This was especially true among officers in the 40 to 60 year age range. This is something that we're going to test very carefully because we've had some great success with campaigns called Fighting Words. And I know some of you are familiar with that because I shared that last year. Very emotional, kind of jabbing the finger at somebody to get their attention. This group told us that that's not what appeals to them. So we're going to be testing to see really what does work there. And we'll certainly let you all know what we're hearing so you can modify your strategies as well. Next slide, please. Another way we listen to members is through our advisory councils. We have 2, well, actually we have 3, but I'm going to talk about the currently serving advisory council and our spouse advisory council, both of which report to the president. Every year we bring on new members into these councils to discuss and consider some of the association's biggest challenges, and they bring forward recommendations to the president for his consideration. The councils have tackled the topic of membership, specifically getting more currently serving officers involved in MOA, the topic of advocacy, where they address the most relevant topics to today's currently serving and getting involved in Storming the Hill, and most recently, the topic of diversity within the MOA membership. The councils provide a much needed perspective, that of the currently serving population and their families. As we look to appeal to younger demographic officers, their valuable is increasingly invaluable. One of the more recent changes we've made with the councils is recruiting members from all over the country and maybe all over the world. Because of our virtual capabilities, we're no longer limited to participation from those just in the National Capital Region. We're recruiting once a year to bring on new participants. And because we've opened it up to a wider audience now, it's getting a little more competitive. But I would encourage you that if you know somebody in your chapters, in your communities that you think would be a great participant, please let us know. Please encourage them to apply. Next slide, please. So there were certainly things that we just couldn't do this past year because of the pandemic. And I know this is something you all can relate to. We couldn't get out in person and talk with current and prospective members. Since March, every one of our planned outreach events was canceled. In a typical year, our outreach program accounts for about 30% of our new basic members. So we had to scramble to find other ways to make up this difference in a virtual world. We haven't cracked that nut. It's still a work in progress. We've tested virtual events, but certainly that's, a virtual exhibit. It just doesn't have the same activity levels that you would see on a trade show floor somewhere. But one thing that our member support team has done is that they've expanded their webinar program, which is open to members and non-members alike. It's really proven to be a great way to introduce prospective members to the expertise and value that MOA offers. And all eligible non-members are then given a basic membership, further building our pipeline for paid membership. And these new members show up on your recruiting list as well. So you can then begin to work to recruit them into your chapters as well. But safe to say, I think we're all looking forward to that day when we can get back on the road again. Next slide, please. So that's a lot about what we've been up to the past year. You may be wondering about the results. How did we really fare? If you had asked me again in March, I would have said it was going to be a tough year, but membership is steady. Membership was up over 2% year over year from 2019 to 2020. We kept pace with 2019 levels of upgrades from basic to premium membership, and we exceeded expectations in upgrades to life membership. We talked about renewal rates exceeding our goals. Obviously, we still have challenges and we still have work to do. That's never going to change. But we found opportunities in a really challenging environment, and we'll continue to build upon the inroads that we've made this year. Next slide, please. So let me shift gears a bit, circle back to something I mentioned earlier about national and chapter efforts complementing one another. There are a number of programs and resources available that can help you in your membership efforts within your communities. I'm not going to go into great detail because I know Terry will be discussing many of them in tomorrow's chapter management session. However, I just want to point them out, highlight them, so you don't feel as if you have to reinvent the wheel for your membership efforts. We want to make your role in membership, your membership efforts as easy as possible. We know it's a big job and we appreciate what you do. So anything we can do to make it easier, we want to do that for you. And we'll certainly continue to highlight chapter opportunities and member communications to help get the word out about the good work that you're doing in your communities and to encourage more members to get involved at the chapter level. Next slide, please. And finally, we're always looking for ways to bring more resources to your chapters and councils. One of the areas in the membership and marketing business unit focuses on relationships with our affinity partners like the USAAs, MOA Insurance, the travel partnership. And every time we're talking with them, we're looking for ways to help support the chapters as well. And we've reached agreements with several of them to help fund and strengthen initiatives. So I'd encourage you to be on the lookout for details that Terry and Aaron put out. There's deadlines associated with some of them. But in many cases, these are opportunities to bring in kind of, I'll call it free money into your chapters. And the more utilization that we have of these programs speaks volumes to our affinity partners when we go back and say we'd like to continue these programs. So next slide, please. So that's all that I have for you this morning. It's probably like a fire hose coming at you. I could certainly talk all day, and I do appreciate being able to share what we're doing. If you have questions, I think Aaron will probably share them with me. We have some time for that. And I think my email was on the previous slide, so you can always reach out to me at any time as well.
Thank you, Kathy. We do have quite a few questions. We've got a little over 5 minutes for those. And I also wanted to remind folks, please, if you're not viewing the chat, you may want to do so by clicking the chat button at the bottom so that you can see some of the everyone questions and if people are asking you a question directly. So Kathy, the first question is a doozy. I'm going to combine two of them. What percentage of basic members become life or premium members? And why would a basic member want to become a paid member?
Why would a basic member like to become a paid member?
Why would they want to become one?
Well, that really goes back to the differentiation that I talked about between the membership categories. And that is a key function of this. If this membership model is going to be successful, we have to give a person a reason to go from basic to premium to life. So if you go to our website on the join page, you can see a list of benefits that are available to basics. The list gets a little longer for premium, and it gets even longer for life. So we're graduating those benefits. So we're looking to find the right mix that will encourage somebody to move to that next level. And then, of course, some of our premium member benefits are available only to paid members. I think specifically of our transition services, resume reviews, LinkedIn reviews, personal consultations, those sorts of things, all premium members. And then from the perspective of working with affinity partners, we're always working that into the conversation as well. What can you offer that would be more for our paid membership levels? And then in terms of moving people from basic to paid levels, it varies from year to year, probably about 3%, but there's a lot of different ways of slicing and dicing this information going forward. And in 2019 to 2020, I think we had over 3,000 people upgrade from basic to premium membership. And of course, looking to grow that.
And the next question, can you please share a little bit about surviving spouse membership, how they can retain life membership and also need to redo it in their own name?
Okay. Surviving spouse membership, when a member passes, if we have a spouse name on file, that spouse now becomes a surviving spouse membership or member. And we will communicate directly with that person. We will send out a new member kit. Where it gets more complicated is if we don't know that there's a surviving spouse. So what I would encourage all of you when you're talking with your members is to make sure that this information is on our file so we can honor that promise that we've made that we would take care of your surviving spouse.
Our military is much smaller now than back during Vietnam, Korea, World War II. Won't this be reflected in our membership? The total number of our officer corps is dwindling.
Yes, Yes, absolutely. Our pool is smaller, but with that in mind, I think we still have room for growth. We're at about a 30% market share when you combine currently serving and retirees. If you break it down, retirees, we have much more of the population than we do currently serving. So there is room for growth, but that is a good point to keep in mind as we think about what that overall membership goal ultimately is.
What concrete results did we get from the ads run during the Service Academy games?
Okay, we are still evaluating that because that just happened in the month of December. But what we're looking at is, how many people went to our website, how many people viewed the video, time spent on site. Again, joins is a piece of it, but the overall objective of this campaign is brand awareness. And I think we'll also see when we look at our benchmarks for brand awareness. I mentioned the brand awareness study. We have those benchmarks. Ultimately, we'd like to see that needle move as well when we do a refresh of that study.
Is there a way that chapters can use the commercial, and is it permissible for them to use it on their chapter websites?
That's a good question. And I am going to have to look into that because we are limited because we did use actors in this and they have contracts. So I would have to look into that. But what I can tell you is if you would like to see it, if you would like to share it within your chapters, your chapter meetings, it is on the MOA YouTube channel. And it's called Every Officer Has Two Families. So you can find it there.
Why is there not an associate membership for Americans who have family that is or was in the military, or people who just want to support our military?
But I told Neil that, in fact, we had tried this under Voices for America's Troops, which allowed others to come into our membership. And quite frankly, it was unsuccessful in generating any significant membership growth at all. Neil also asked me about, I think, broadening our membership under that term. The 501c19 mandates from IRS mandates that 75% of our membership data, our membership base, has to be at least veterans, and so we're actually pretty close to that right now. Surviving spouses themselves, not veterans, but they take away from that percentage, and so does not having NOAA and U.S. Public Health Service officers, commissioned officers as well. So we're right about 80%. So introducing non-veteran members into our membership base would put that threshold of 75% at risk.
We do have time for one last quick question, and before we go to break, and that is, Kathy, if you can tell us what two local areas will the ads be viewed during the Super Bowl?
I can do that. We will be in the San Antonio market, and we will be in the Norfolk, Virginia market. So a little far away from Florida. I'm trying to decide if I need to go down to Norfolk just to say I saw it.
Williams, I just want to add, why did you all choose those two markets? Because the Super Bowl is going to be in Tampa, and then we got CENTCOM, we got McDill. It seemed like it's out of sync.
Well, Tampa would be a great market. I agree. For starters, it was sold out. I think a lot of the corporate companies, they knew they wanted to be in that market because that's where the Super Bowl was. But it also came down to costs. We looked at populations, but we looked at costs. You can probably guess, being a nonprofit, our budget's really low. So that took us out of San Diego, it took us out of Tampa, it took us out of New York. So we're working with our budget constraints and still trying to get the results that we think we can get by being in those markets.
Bobby, as a matter of fact, I asked Kathy the exact same question you asked and used the exact same rationale. So we're in sync.
Thank you very much, Kathy.